Imagine a colossal, winged, fire-breathing creature with scales harder than steel. From the Norse mythology of Northern Europe and ancient Greek legends to the Chinese Empire in East Asia, dragons have always played a central role. They have captivated humanity's collective imagination for millennia, never losing their allure. Yet, have you ever truly pondered something peculiar about this? Why is a creature so prevalent across world cultures completely absent from reality? Why do the laws of nature and Earth's evolutionary path seem to conspire against the existence of dragons? Today, we will examine dragons not through the lens of magic, but through hard science. The greatest obstacle to the existence of dragons is a fundamental anatomical issue. In biology, nearly all modern vertebrates on Earth are classified as tetrapods, meaning they evolved to possess a maximum of 4 primary limbs. Amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and birds all share this ancient lineage. When birds or bats evolved the ability to fly, nature did not simply sprout new organs from their backs. Instead, over millions of years, it gradually transformed a pair of their forelimbs into wings. Consider, however, the anatomy of the Western dragon often depicted in fantasy films. They possess 4 legs for walking on the ground, plus a separate pair of large wings on their backs. This makes the dragon a hexapod, a creature with 6 limbs. On Earth, 6-limbed vertebrates never successfully emerged from early evolutionary lineages. Such body structures are exclusive to insect classes like cockroaches, ants, and flies. Biologically speaking, therefore, if Western dragons were real, they would be more closely related to flies than to lizards. The limits of physics and heavy animal aerodynamics. Let us say we ignore that tetrapod rule for the sake of an argument. We assume dragons have an anatomy like a wyvern, where their front legs function simultaneously as wings. The next problem immediately blocking them is the law of physics regarding air weight. This law is known as the square-cube law, formulated by Galileo Galilei. This law states that when an object increases in size, its volume grows much faster than its surface area. If the body size of a lizard is multiplied by 10, its weight will skyrocket to become 1,000 times heavier. The largest flying animal recorded in Earth's history was Quetzalcoatlus, a giant reptile from the dinosaur era. It was as tall as a modern adult giraffe, but its weight was estimated to be no more than 250 kilograms. Why could an animal as large as a giraffe be that light? Because nature designed their bones to have very thin air cavities resembling a honeycomb structure. Their wing skin was also just a thin membrane without any thick layer of muscle or flesh. Now compare that with the descriptions of the dragons we glorify. They are depicted as having thick chest muscles, massive tails, and protective scales as heavy as tank armor plating. A body mass that heavy would require a wingspan stretching perhaps the size of an entire football field. On top of that, the chest muscles required to flap those giant wings would become incredibly heavy. This new muscle weight would actually add to its total body weight, trapping the dragon in a vicious cycle of physics. Instead of flying gracefully, a real-world dragon would just run a few meters, get exhausted, and faint from cardiac stress. The mystery of ancient mass psychology. If the physical and biological barriers are so real, we are faced with a very interesting historical question. How is it possible that ancient human civilization separated by thousands of kilometers with no communication could create the exact same myth? Ancient tribes in the interiors of South America worshipped Quetzalcoatl, a giant winged serpent that ruled the skies. At the same time, people along China's Yangtze River drew long rain-bringing creatures called Lung. The first answer to this global mystery lies right beneath their feet, buried in the darkness of the earth. Thousands of years before humans knew the terms dinosaur or paleontology, they were farmers, well diggers, and stone miners. When they accidentally discovered a skull the size of a horse carriage with rows of teeth as long as daggers, their brains tried to look for a logical explanation. Since no living animal had a size that massive, the most rational conclusion at the time was these are the remains of giant monsters. A real example happened in Europe, where discoveries of ancient woolly rhinoceros fossils from the Ice Age inside caves were often misinterpreted by villagers as physical proof of man-killing dragon skeletons. The anthropological predator instinct theory. However, fossils alone are not enough to explain why the form of a dragon is almost always a combination of reptiles and predators. An anthropologist named David E. Jones proposed a very radical scientific theory regarding this matter. According to him, the image of the dragon is actually genetically coded inside the primate brain, including human ancestors, as a result of ruthless natural selection. For millions of years living in the trees of Africa, our ancestors had only 3 main enemies that threatened their survival every single day. The first enemy was a large snake that could slither silently among the leaves to constrict them. The second enemy was a big cat like an ancient tiger stalking from the bushes with its deadly claws. And the third enemy was a giant eagle that could suddenly ambush from the blue sky without warning. These 3 predators planted a deep psychological trauma that was passed down from generation to generation through subconscious fear instincts. When ancient humans began gathering in front of campfires and started telling stories about the most terrifying monster they could imagine, their imagination automatically combined those 3 instinctual fears. They took the long, scaly body belonging to a snake. They added the sharp claws and strong legs belonging to a big cat. And they completed it with the wide wings belonging to a bird of prey. It was the combination of these 3 main predator elements that birthed the visual architecture of the creature called a dragon. So a dragon is not a creature we see in the outside world, but rather a blueprint of fear that we carry from the past inside our own heads. Thermodynamics and biochemical limits of fire breathing. Now, let us turn to the aspect of dragons that defies reality's logic the most: the ability to produce and spray fire from inside the mouth. Thermodynamically, for a living creature, igniting a fire requires 3 components: fuel, oxygen, and an initial spark source. If we look for an analogy in the wild, there is actually one small insect that has a chemical weapon system that is very similar. That creature is called the bombardier beetle. Inside the back of its abdomen, this beetle has 2 separate internal compartments that store hydrogen peroxide and hydroquinone liquids. When feeling threatened by predators, frogs, or ants, this beetle will shoot both liquids into a special reaction chamber. Inside that reaction chamber, a catalyst enzyme triggers an instant chemical explosion that produces a scalding hot liquid reaching temperatures of 100 degrees Celsius. This super hot fluid is then sprayed with high accuracy through an ejector organ that can rotate in any direction. If a giant-sized dragon wanted to scale up this weapon from hot liquid to pure fire, organically and chemically speaking, it could actually happen. Dragons could utilize the bacteria inside their stomachs to produce methane or hydrogen gas in massive amounts from the decomposition of food. This methane gas would then be stored in a high-pressure biological sac before being channeled toward the throat when they are ready to strike. It sounds very cool on paper, but this system has a biological flaw that is absolutely fatal to an animal's survival. Fire produces extreme radiant heat, and animal flesh tissue is not designed to withstand temperatures of thousands of degrees. If dragons do not have a protective layer made of refractory ceramics like those on spacecraft, spraying fire would actually burn their own mouths, tongues, and lungs. Shooting fire from inside one's own body is an evolutionary shortcut to mass species suicide.
The ruler of an isolated island who became a real dragon. Even though fantasy dragons, with all their magic, are rejected by the laws of nature, luckily the universe does not let us go home empty-handed. We have a real-world dragon variant that lives and breathes under our sun today. In a small isolated chain of islands in the Indonesian archipelago, there is one ancient ruler that successfully maintained its throne, the Komodo dragon. Just like the illustration of the giant scaly green lizard we saw at the beginning of this video, the Komodo is a living manifestation of the peak of modern reptile evolution. Their body length can reach up to 3 meters with a weight exceeding 70 kilograms for adult male specimens. They cannot fly due to their dense body mass, and they certainly do not have the ability to blast fire from their mouths. However, the hunting mechanisms and strategies they possess are no less terrifying compared to any mythological monster. For years, researchers believed that the Komodo's main weapon was a deadly bacterial infection from decaying flesh residue in their saliva. However, recent modern MRI scanning studies successfully revealed a much more sinister secret hidden inside their jaws. Komodo dragons turn out to have complex venom or poison glands located at the bottom part of their jaws. This venom works by pumping a special compound that prevents blood clotting and instantly collapses their prey's blood pressure down to zero. Bitten prey will not die from infections days later, but will instead slowly weaken from severe bleeding that cannot stop before finally entering a phase of total helpless shock. This is the real-world version of a dragon, a masterpiece of killing efficiency selected directly by the cold process of natural selection without the need for cosmetic magic. The immortality of the myth in the modern world. In the end, we must accept the reality that mechanical, winged, fire-carrying dragons will never walk on this earth because our physical boundaries are far too rigid. Bone structures are too fragile for heavy loads, chest muscles are too weak for massive wing flaps, and fire is too destructive to be stored inside an organic container called flesh. However, this physical absence of dragons in the real world is the precise main reason why they can never die inside our minds. Dragons are a monument reminding us of the era of our deep ignorance toward the boundaries of the wild and distant past. They simultaneously stand as eternal proof of how extraordinary the capacity of human imagination is to weave fear into a highly magnificent work of art. We no longer need dragons to actually exist outside our bedroom windows today. Because inside the pages of storybooks, cinema screens, and gaming spaces, they have already flown much higher than any law of physics in this universe could ever allow. So, if you were given a time machine to change world history, would you choose for dragons to be real with all their horrific terrors? Or would you prefer they remain resting in peace as a beautiful myth that inhabits our heads? Please write your own scientific arguments and theories down below in the comments section. Thank you very much for being willing to watch this long essay until the end. Don't forget to click like, and see you again in the next World Mystery